All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Swift AI Security and Compliance Podcast. I'm very excited to introduce our guest here today. Paul, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, Paul Silva. I am Chief Innovation Officer at PixelEdge.
Awesome. Hey everybody, I'm Jeremy, account executive at Swift AI, and we are a device management and security and compliance solution loved by businesses all around who are seeking to close sales with compliance, secure their devices, automate onboarding and offboarding, and can save lots and lots of time, hours, and money using Swift. So let's dive right into it. Paul, could you tell us a little bit more about PixelEdge here?
Sure. PixelEdge has been around for about 10 years, and our target market are business services firms, particularly in the sustainability and financial services sector. So my typical client, I'll pick on one of them, Environmental Resources Management. They're one of the world's largest environmental consultancies. So they're a couple thousand employees. And like all consultancies I've ever run into, the way they solve problems is by sending expensive people, at times armed with advanced technology like Microsoft Excel. And the laptops might even be running some version of Windows that we would recognize, as opposed to that you would recognize and not like say me. Like, oh, XP, you're still running that, huh? That's fascinating. But the challenge that those companies tend to face is that you can't scale up your business the way you can if you're running a software company. You're at an AI company, right? So if you guys start getting product market fit and you get some great, or maybe you already have, and you get some great traction, then great, just tell Amazon, to put on some more servers or instances. You got to increase your customer support team a little, but like you can scale really rapidly. But if a consulting business wants to scale, the only way they can do this is by hiring more consultants. And those kinds of people are really hard to find. They usually have PhDs in obscure fields, like environmental compliance, health, safety, blah, blah, blah. You're in the security sector, so a similar set of challenges, just a different space, right? So you just can't scale up without hiring more people. And once you get to be the size of our clients, it's actually really hard to hire more people and keep them. So they can't achieve the sort of growth targets that you and I as tech people are used to. So that's the problem they face. What we do is we come in and we take the spreadsheets that they've been solving their problems with and turn them into modern applications that allow, typically we can make it so that the same staff can handle 2 to 3 times as much work. And that means and these are companies that are turning work away. So no one loses their job because they're like, oh no, we say no. The biggest companies in the world call us and they want environmental health compliance, and we have to say no because we don't have enough people with PhDs to do the work. But now that they have our software, they're able to handle that work, and they're able to go back to their clients, and instead of handing them, I'm sure you've seen things like this in your compliance work, right? Hey, we've done the audit. Here is your 150,000 line Excel file telling you where you are and are not compliant. Like, really? That was fine when I was in college. Okay. That is not fine now. That was a long time ago for anyone that can't see me, by the way. We're talking over 20 years ago. So now they can actually give their clients a modern interface. Oh, here you have 100, facilities in your supply chain that help you manufacture your thing. And we can now show you what the health and safety record is of every single facility and what the most common problems are and how to track if it's being done. You could technically do that in Excel, but it wouldn't actually really work. So those are the kinds of things we have the fun of building. And I love the impact that it has because, again, we tend to focus on the sustainability sector as our hottest sector. So my whole team gets to take great pride that we're in the process of trying to save lives and or save the planet, which is pretty cool, especially if you get paid to do it. Extra cool. And the work is fascinating and interesting. And I've spent my entire life as an entrepreneur or entrepreneurship educator. I've been in the angel capital space, leading venture capital-like entities. So I spent a lot of time talking to young entrepreneurs and watching them try to tackle difficult problems. And the problem space is just totally different here. In every single case, when I'm working with a client for PixelEdge, I know who the customer is. There's no market risk. There's no channel risk. My client already has a relationship with these customers. They're already buying Excel spreadsheets from them. And there's basically no product risk because I look at my team of 125 people around the world and go like, yeah, I know we can beat an Excel spreadsheet. Like we can do a lot better than that. So it's sort of a slam dunk. Easy for us to find a way to make a big impact and make those people's lives better. But that's enough yapping for me. You should probably ask me the question you actually have
No,
instead of the one I think you have.
very, very cool. I think you just laid out the table of contents for what we're going to be talking about today. So I want to dive more into the customer journey, the folks who work with you guys. I want to dive a little bit, just a little bit into the technology that you mentioned. Later, I definitely want to dive into your work with the accelerator, investing, entrepreneurship, teaching, all that fun stuff. So, just so the audience and I can get a better understanding, what is the customer journey of somebody who works with PixelEdge? Is who is the customer persona when I come to you for help, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
So depending on the size of the client, right? If they're a client that's as large as a ERM, then we're talking to someone who's a business unit owner, right? They have a variety of titles depending on what the company is, but the generic term would be this is a person who's got P&L responsibility for some chunk of the business. If they're a smaller company, not a billion-dollar enterprise. So one of our other clients in the sustainability space is ICAS. They're the country's largest provider of energy retrofitting services.
Nice.
So if you want to make your affordable housing building, energy retrofitted, figure out how to do it. These are the number one people that you call for that. All right, so they're not as big as my other client, ERM. In that case, we're talking right to the CEO of the company. But in both cases, you're talking to someone who has P&L responsibilities. That's the kind of persona that I'm talking to, someone that cares about the bottom line and has to worry about all the things that go into that. It is not necessarily the person, that's who you start with. And then to your point, then there's all the other people you got to make happy too. The people that are not necessarily worrying about the bottom line, that they get paid by the hour. So you're bringing them technology that's going to decrease their billable hours and you can run into challenges there.
Oh,
So
interesting.
that's the person. I'll let you ask your next favorite question about them.
I'd love to understand what is the experience as they use, and I still would love to learn a little bit more about the technology too, but perhaps we could start with the user experience.
Sure. So like any enterprise product, and I'm sure you've experienced that with your company's product, right? There's lots of different stakeholders. So you and I have been starting talking about who the payer is, right? The person that calls me and they write the check at the end of the day, they want the thing. We'll just call them the CEO to make our life easy.
Okay.
But they usually don't really use the product,
Mhm.
right? Ever. They have people for that. um, then there's like salespeople, partners, usually partners in a consultancy, whose job is to go out there and actually close the business and interface with the client and give them the fancy reports at the end. Again, I imagine that much of this is similar to your work. I don't know your space super well, but it's compliance. So I've noticed a lot of similarities in different compliance spaces. I'm like HIPAA, health and safety, environment, cyber, yeah, whatever. There's rules. Are you following the rules? Can you prove you're following the rules, et cetera? Are there some charts and graphs that make it easy for me to see that I'm following the rules? So those people, there's the salespeople, and then there's the on the ground like expert, the nerd. Subject matter expert would be the official term. I say this as a self-avowed nerd. I was once a physicist. Right. Then those people. So those are the three different people that tend to use it. So for the salespeople partners, their user experience is there's a bunch of data visualizations built into all of our applications to take those what would have been the hundreds of thousands of lines on the Excel spreadsheet and now turn that into useful data that they can show the client. So now they can sit in front of their client. Let's say it's a company that makes printers or something, whatever. They're a widget manufacturer. And I can say, like, okay, so you've got 100 people in your supply chain that help manufacture the different parts of your widgets. And you want to make sure that you're in compliance with international health and safety law. So I can show you that this facility right here is your worst performer. And here's why they're the worst performer. And in general, across the entire portfolio, this particular type of problem, lock-in tagout's a common one for health and safety. Don't ask me what that is. I blissfully don't need to know. But apparently it's important. Lock-in tagout is your biggest problem across the entire portfolio, and this place is your biggest spot. So now leadership can focus their resources and go, oh, I need to figure out how to come up with some best practices on lock-in tagout, inform the whole company. And this particular site, we need to send a task force down there to clean them up, make sure that they don't have these problems anymore. that information was technically in the Excel file, but no one could find it. It was too
Right.
hard, right? So
Right.
now the salesperson looks like $1,000,000 because they're talking to you. There's these pretty graphs. They can pull up a chart of the. They can pull up a map of the world. They can see the hot spots on it. They can click on it. Things zoom in, and it just looks like $1,000,000. And so they're giving more value to the client because the information, as opposed to just the data, the actual knowledge is more visible, and it's a lot easier for the salesperson to charge a better price if it looks good, right? It's important that you have good things under the hood, but the car has to look good too, or you won't be able to get the best price.
Absolutely.
So this is what's helping them. Does that make sense before I move on to the
Uh,
user?
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, no, and I can stop, and again I can ramble.
I just had a quick follow-up question. So you
Mhm.
mentioned PixelEdge helps companies help other companies make sure that they're compliant. Um, what type of compliance are we talking about? A couple of the ones that I'm familiar with, SOC 2 and HIPAA, PCI, ISO, things like that. Or does this expand beyond security compliance?
So we are not a compliance company per se. Many of our clients are doing work in compliance spaces,
Hmm.
in which case they have come to us to build them apps to facilitate them handling compliance. So one of our most successful applications is an auditing app. But take the word audit very broadly to actually just mean there's a set of rules that you've got to follow, and I'm going to ask a set of questions to figure out if you are in compliance with the rules, and I'm going to attach evidence to prove that you actually are in compliance with that rule. But the set of rules can be anything, whatever. So we had to design the tool because when our client goes in to talk to their clients,
Yep.
right? Well, that client has a variety of compliances they need to worry about. They need to worry about the health and safety in the United States and the health and safety in England.
Yep.
They need to worry about health and safety, but they also need to worry about human trafficking because they've signed on to the human trafficking protocol. I'm not going to get the name of it right. They've also agreed to certain environmental protocols. So what are they doing around the environment? There could be cybersecurity, right? So it's whatever the rules are. There's a system for inputting. Here's the rules, and they get to pull them from a standardized bank that grows over time. That again, we built for our client. Our client adds the bank. We built the tool. We built the bank that they can then add things to. And so now every time they add a new client or do a new project, that bank gets smarter and smarter. So it's easier and easier for them to onboard a new customer. Say, oh, you're in the US and UK? Boom, I've pulled in the OSHA and the UK equivalent of OSHA rules that are
Yep.
applicable for you.
Everything you need to know.
It's all right there. So that did I understand your question correctly?
Yes, yes, you did. I'm curious in the grand scheme of things for audience members who are already looking into compliance. A lot of folks know about Vanta and Drata, right? And the auditor, working with auditors and CISOs and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you say PixelEdge fits within this puzzle? Is it an alternative to Vanta and Drata?
Oh, so again, not at all. So we are white labeling, right? We build a thing for our clients. We're not a sales company. So if I think of ERM, um, they already have relationships with the biggest companies in the world. The Amazon, Netflixes, whoever they are. Just think of the biggest companies. They probably have. I don't know who their client list is. That's none of my business. But I know it's like the Fortune 200, right? So probably all of them. So I'm not going in there making a compliance tool and trying to convince Amazon or someone to use it. We've built something for ERM, and then ERM already has relationships with these companies, comes in and says, you have these compliance needs. Let's do it. Now, if there's a product like Vanta, I happen to be familiar with Vanta. We use Vanta ourselves to make sure that we're SOC 2 compliant, right? Because that's not our superpower. All right. So great. That's a super specialized tool for a very specific kind of certification.
Yep.
And we use that tool internally. What we've been building is for our clients are coming up with things that are not like, oh, it's SOC 2 or it's ISO
Right.
this. It's this one standard. I'm a huge multinational corporation. I have a bunch of different things I need to be compliant with, and I want one source of truth to go to. That's one of the apps that we've built. But a similar app would be when our friends at iCast, the energy retrofitting company, well,
Mhm.
they're coming in and they're doing an audit too. They're not doing an audit that has to do with OSHA and whatnot, but they're trying to figure out like, is there insulation in these walls? What kinds of insulation? Are there solar panels? What kind of windows are these? All the thing. What's the heating system and cooling system look like? they have a bunch of questions they need to ask to figure out what kinds of things can they do to the house to increase that building's energy efficiency. So likewise, we've had to build a tool for them that's all about asking these questions, getting the answers, and being able to make intelligent suggestions by leveraging the knowledge of the really smart people that are there.
Got it.
Another important difference, I think, having used Vanta, and I'm not the point person on Vanta, so I'm just one of the people that our point person is Paul. Go do the compliance things at Vanta. So if I have anything wrong, Vanta, I'm sorry, right? That's a mostly do-it-yourself, self-serve solution. That there are humans that I can press a button and I can talk to at Vanta, but they have built really something that looks like a software solution, right? Which I hope gives them software-style profit margins. The kind of work that we're doing for our clients are where that's not possible. It is all really bespoke to this. This client is a multinational with all these different things, and so they need something very special for them, which means no matter what, at the end of the day, there is a consultant attached to this project work. It's not you're just going to pay for some app that we built for ERM and never interact with ERM consultants. Oh no, ERM consultants are parachuting in and they're doing the initial assessment and they're doing it powered by so it's more like they're wearing an Iron Man suit, right? They're Tony Stark. You need Tony Stark. You can't just be Iron Man. Whereas those other software solutions are autonomous robots.
Got
So
it. Got
push
it.
the analogy entirely too far.
No, that's great. That was the next follow-up question I was going to ask is it's an interesting business model. You go into each enterprise and you understand what their pain points and their problems are, and you create very custom targeted solutions, whether it's a product plus consulting service, right? And you mentioned just in the breadth of what you guys do, whether it's healthcare compliance, or you mentioned human trafficking, and then there's environmental and finance. Um, how how help if you could help me understand how do all the pieces work together, given that the industries are so different and the asks might be so different, or are they not different at all?
Yeah, so they're just different enough, but it's surprising. It wasn't surprising to me in retrospect, but it shouldn't have been surprising to me, is what I should say. So I spent 20 years in the startup, or frighteningly 25 years in the startup world, and I have seen thousands upon thousands of pitches from startups.
Mm.
And after you've seen that many, you're like, oh, it's a medical device startup. It's going to follow this pattern. And yes, there's some nuance of differences, and those nuances matter, but you already know it's a medical device startup. It's got it's an AI startup. Okay. So you get used to certain patterns. And what I've discovered is for our clients, again, these business services firms, consultancies, the specifics of their domain are very different, but the core problems are the same. The
Mm.
core problem is they don't have enough people. They're turning away work. They can't grow fast enough if they're owned by anyone other than about to retire founders, right? If you're owned by private equity, then those private equity partners are looking at you and saying, I demand significant growth or you're out. If you're owned by the people that founded the company and they already have their yachts and they're not worrying about it, then there isn't a ton of pressure. As long as the company's profitable, everyone's happy. But in any other situation, you've got people breathing down your neck. And again, you can't hire enough talent. There has been a talent shortage for many years in some sectors like accounting since the financial crisis of '08. So we're closing on, we're approaching 20 years of them not being able to hire enough accountants. That's that's real problem. So they need to solve that problem, and they can only solve it with technology, but they don't know how. But their problems are the same. I don't have enough of these people to do it. The work is very bespoke and particular. We solve the problem with spreadsheets. We bill by the hour, which means we don't have an economic incentive to spend time figuring out how to make better tools
Mm.
because I can't bill for that time. And if I make a better tool, then I have fewer billable hours. So unless I have a competitor taking business right out of my hands, left and right, that is the only time I'll finally be motivated to do something about it. Therefore the problems end up being the same. So we walk in and I say, okay, who's your customer? How do you solve the problem now? Okay, you have this bespoke spreadsheet that Charlie made. Charlie, let me see your spreadsheet. I'm going to come back to you in a few weeks and show you a first ugly iteration of an app-ified version of that spreadsheet. and let's iterate from there. And within 12 weeks, we've made something that's better than the spreadsheet. And also, if Charlie quits, wins the lottery, or God forbid, gets hit by a bus,
Yeah.
you actually have something that can operate without Charlie, because of course, those bespoke spreadsheets, you've seen them, you've made them, right? We've all made them. Like, no one knows how to use that thing except you. No one knows that,
Oh yeah.
oh, there's a bug on tab 3, line 7 that's been there for 10 years. I just keep copying it each year. And this year I noticed there was a bug in it. It wasn't a terrible, horrible bug, but there's been a bug, and I have been giving erroneous data. That has happened to me. I imagine it has happened to anyone you know that's been doing this, or they haven't paid close enough attention to their formulas. So I can make that problem go away. So that's why those aspects all end up being the same. So phase one, I give them a tool that makes them more efficient. And I, so that's the technology part, but I, the consultant, my job is to help them change their business model so they don't charge by the hour, because again, then your incentives are all messed up. Instead, I go, okay, you've been doing this a long time. It usually takes you, 100 hours to do this job, give or take. So we're going to charge a flat rate of 100 hours times whatever you tended to charge. And now if you can do it in half the time, you're going to double your profit margin. Oh, that'd be nice. I'm like, yes, doubling your profit margin would be nice. And so then step one, just make a tool that the client never sees, but just makes the users, the end users at the company, 2 to 3 times as productive. Step two, add some interfaces, data visualizations that we are talking about earlier for the salespeople, so that now the salespeople can close more work, and they have more capacity, right? So again, they can't hire more people, but if you just made it take half as much time for your people to do the work, that means you could do twice as much work. So now the sales team can sell twice as much work, and they have prettier, shinier things to show so that they can probably get better prices for that work. That's step two. And then step three is where I really start to have fun. Step three is when you say, okay, now let's go beyond like a really good spreadsheet. Because that's basically what I've said. Is like I've made like a really tricked out spreadsheet / Power BI. Way more robust, way more survivable if the person leaves. But for all intents and purposes, glorified Power BI in a spreadsheet. When you really turn it into an app is when you go, okay, what can we do with an app that you can't do with a spreadsheet that your people aren't used to doing? So for some of our clients, again, a lot of the work we do ends up looking like an audit, right? Even if it's not literally an audit. Well, when you're done with an audit, what do you get? You get a long list of to-dos that you need to track. And it turns out a lot of these people don't have task tracking systems, if you can believe it. They don't even use Asana or Trello or whatever. Or even if they do, let's say they're a large company that you're running an audit for. Well, the large company has a whole supply chain. Certainly all the companies in the supply chain aren't using the same to-do list software, and you can't like interface with that company's, like that would be a nightmare. So what we do is we build in functionality so that now our client's client can, we'll go back to the example of I've got 100 factories that help manufacture my widget. Now, not only can I see, here's the factory that's the poor performer, but I can see here's the to-do list to each factory on what they need to do. And those factories are owned by other companies, but they're my vendors, and they want to keep the business. So if I tell them, if I'm Walmart, like, hey, you got to fix this, or I'm not buying any more widgets from you to put into my bigger widget, then guess what? You're going to do it. So, but now they have a cross-platform way of tracking all the to-dos and seeing if the person did it. They don't have to wait till next year's audit. They've got practically real-time answers. So that's one example of how you can add something that's value that you couldn't get by sending expensive people and spreadsheets. And now that means that our client's client is going to keep using that app. They're going to pay a subscription fee to use the app forever. And then when they do want consulting on how to solve lock-in tag out, technically they could put it up for bid and send it to anyone, but all the data is already in the app run by the company that's our client. So aren't they just going to call our client, because that's where everything is? So they're going to increase their lock-in with their existing customers and probably get business they couldn't have gotten before, because they're the only person that can offer a system that will let you talk across the supply chain. That's one example of ways where you can, once you have the data, you can start figuring out how to add functionality that lets the client's client do self-service things. And then you really get to drive some impressive competitive advantage and value.
It's really, really cool. And it sounds like you have your process, down really tight. I'd love to learn a little bit more about the team behind this that makes this possible. I imagine, so do you have a like a product team, engineering team that develops these, spins up these apps, right? Like in, what did you say? What, like 12 weeks or something? Something crazy like
Yeah.
that. A couple weeks. And the consulting team, right, that does the manual service. I would also love to understand what your role is as Chief Innovation Officer. That sounds like a lot of fun, and just what your day to day looks like. Well, yeah.
Sure.
How-
I pinch myself that I have this job.
yeah.
So our company has a couple different categories of roles. Yes, there are these software engineers, the developers who build the thing. There are the customer experience people that are doing the quality assurance testing, that are interfacing with the client. Like I'm interfacing with the client at the very beginning, at the very high level. But then there's the day to day. Is this feature meeting your expectations? Let's talk to the person on the ground who's the translator between our nerds and the client. So all those kinds of people, that's our customer experience team. They do a brilliant job because I can tell from your background, right? It is to speak geek and speak client. Those are two very different languages, and you got to make them work. And we're an international company. We're in Pakistan, Kenya, and the U.S. with the vast majority of our team in Pakistan and Kenya, where our two co-founders, Ali and Mika, are from. So you've also got all kinds of cross-cultural stuff going on, and our clients are international. Um, London Stock Exchange Group and ERM, they're both headquartered in London, but they're both so large that when we're talking to them, I never know what time zone the client's going to be in. I've talked to people in Australia, in London, in the US, in South America, all over Europe, and they're all working for the same gosh darn company. It's so huge, right? So there's a lot of cross-cultural challenges that team has to be able to handle, and they do a great job of it. And then we have our analysts, and that's for all of the stuff that people sadly doesn't get appreciated. All right, so hey, we're making this thing for you. You have to give us all of your old data, and we have to put it into the new app. Well, someone has to take that data, which is not clean. Like that's just some ugly Excel file or CSV. It's not formatted the right way. Anyone who's ever had to do that stuff understands how hard data import and export can be. Or for the London Stock Exchange Group, one of the things we do is there's a certain type of document that's filed by companies, and the federal government makes them available in PDF form. Those PDFs need to be downloaded and scraped, and the data has to be put into the right places. All those kinds of things are going on. And then once you have all your data there, we're not just handing it off to the client. In many cases, part of our value add is interpreting that data. Like I've noticed, because our clients aren't used to doing that, right? I mean, they're used to a certain level of it, but we have access to tools they're not used to. We have data scientists. We have expertise in AI machine learning. So we can do things to the data. We can analyze and see things in the data that they can't. So our analysts are doing everything from cleaning to interpreting and bringing new value to our clients so they can realize, yeah, so if we knew all of the incident reports at all of the facilities all over the world, we would be able to know how we're doing compared to industry standard. And I didn't know you could do that. Yes, you can. So I'd
Wow.
say those are the three biggest streams of troublemaking that we do.
I'd love to understand how big is the team that makes this engine run internally, and how roughly what does the split look like between software and customer experience and analysts?
Oh, it's a minority of our team that are actual coders. And part of that's because we believe wholeheartedly, we try to practice what we preach on building tools. So one thing that we don't talk a lot about on the website because our clients don't care, but I'm talking to a fellow nerd, and it seems like your audience is pretty nerdy, so I can nerd out with y'all. When we started, our founders realized the importance of doing what isn't normally incentive, because for all intents and purposes, we're a professional services firm too, right? The normal model is to get paid by the hour to code, right? So it's not terribly different than getting paid by the hour to inspect your health and safety, blah, blah. But we wanted to do things differently. So we took a big hit early on and invested a lot of time on something that generated no billable hours. We don't even have a billable hour business model. We can talk about that later if you're interested. And so we built a platform. In my old world, I was in the video game business. We'd call that an engine, like the Unreal Engine, right?
Mhm.
And it turns out almost nobody does that. I mean, yes, there are libraries and things. Don't get me wrong. Of course, people reuse code. But I mean, we have an engine that makes it so that when we're building an enterprise app, within a tiny fraction of the time of just about anybody else, we've got an app up that they go, what? Now, to do all the subtlety of making it really sing to be their work, that takes a bunch of custom coding. So we get the biggest hit at the beginning. But at that beginning, that means they've got a SOC 2 ready. And there's like 3 other certifications I can't freaking remember. But, they've got a platform that's robust and secure and can do a bunch of standard important things on day one. And we don't have to sit there and, as apparently has been happened to some of my clients, have a 4-hour meeting with 10 people to design the login screen. We do not do that, just to be
Right,
clear.
right.
This is what some of our competitors do. I don't know how they're still in business, but anyway. So a minority of our team is doing that. Most of our team is on the experience side and the data analyst side, even if they're not necessarily visible to the client, right? The client only cares about getting certain things done. So in the work we're doing for the Angel Capital Association, which is the trade association of all the angel groups in the US, of which I served on the board of that organization 12 years ago or something. My company has built the app that they are now using to facilitate any angel group in the country. If they're trying to raise more money for the company than that angel group can put in, they're using this app to help them do it.
Mm.
So those people are interfacing with this woman, Zunera, who's the user experience team member, who's the interface. There's a bunch of developers, amazing people doing their work that never interface with the client. The client respects that they're there, but doesn't know. They just know there's me, the chief innovation officer, and there's Zunera. So they thank her a lot, and she's very smart and mentions the other people, and I mention the other people. But there's a whole army of people behind us that the client often doesn't see. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. And there's a lot that I still want to get through. So we could do like a pseudo lightning round.
Yeah, yeah.
But first, what is well, how would you describe your role as Chief Innovation Officer?
My main job is to help the client even figure out what product needs to be built, because my clients don't, before I joined the company, PixelEdge was a more standard software development firm which is, hey, I have an idea for a product. It would be like this. Can you build it for me? And then PixelEdge did a damn good job of building it. And that's why I joined. What I've added is, hey, you have a lot of problems.
Yep.
I'll help you figure out which of those problems we should solve with tech first. And then when we've solved that one, we can talk about what the next one is. So I help them figure out because they're not product people. They don't know how to do that. I can't do health and safety audits. They don't know what products are. So I come in and serve as that translator, basically do a startup. If I remember correctly, you're a Y Combinator alum.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's a bunch of tools I use that you would recognize, where I'm going in and helping them identify, we're filling in a canvas, we're figuring out who the stakeholders are, what the value proposition is, mapping out the business model, figuring out how the ROI is going to work. And then, okay, and we come up with 10 ideas, we're going to go with this one. And then I engage the rest of the team and they come in and they start building the thing.
I love that because I've had experiences before where we hired, software engineering help. And yeah, I guess the thing that I appreciate the most is you actually go in as a business partner, right? You understand their business model, their process, their customers, what they care about, what the customers care about, what their biggest pain points are. And you really do this problem solving exercise to make sure that this is the right thing to be working on right now. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Switching,
And
yeah,
oh,
go ahead.
sorry. And sorry, I'll let you switch gears in a moment. And critical to that is business model. Just like our clients, we tell them you can't keep charging by the hour on any work that you're using tech for. Likewise, we don't charge by the hour for anything we do. We come in and our business model is all based on the value that we create. So if we spend a year building an app that doesn't get any adoption or revenue, we're not going to make practically anything on that. If we build an app that is a runaway success that triples your profit margins and lets you double your top line, we're going to make a lot of money. But you're going to be happy to pay us. And you're
Right.
going to pay us month after month, year after year, because we're going to keep improving that app. So we've created an incentive where we only make money if you make money, which means we are all aligned. Whereas, in many cases, the situation is, hey, I get paid by the hour. Oh, I left a bug in there by mistake. You got to pay me to fix the bug too. That's just how it works, right? Like,
Right.
no. That's not cool. I don't like it when my accountant does that. Why would I like it when a programmer does that?
Absolutely. Can you tell me a little bit more about your work with the accelerator and working with startups?
Sure. So I was a computational physicist once upon a time, which means I didn't even know how to tie one of these when I started my first company. But very fortunate for me, a bunch of business people took pity on me and helped me make my first company and start the entrepreneurship club at my alma mater, UMass Amherst. And that gave me the bug for both being an entrepreneur and for teaching entrepreneurship. So I helped start the entrepreneurship program at UMass. And then out of that, we realized we needed something more than an intro to entrepreneurship class. We needed a mentoring program of some kind. That led to the creation of what would go on to be named Valley Venture Mentors, which was recognized as one of the top 100 accelerators in the country in 2017, which was pretty cool right as I retired. And we got to do some really innovative design in that accelerator. There was already hundreds of accelerators at that time, so it was a crowded marketplace. It's only gotten more crowded since then. And I'm happy to talk more about any of the things you're interested in on that. But it was exciting for a couple of years to be 100% focused on training dozens. We were training about 50 startups a year through that program, which is nothing compared to Y Combinator. But I am in Podunk, Western Massachusetts, not Silicon Valley. So that increased the total deal flow in Western Massachusetts by about 50 startups, maybe
Wow,
49 startups a year.
incredible.
So
Incredible.
it was a big change for our region, and it created a lot of tech jobs and opportunities that wouldn't have existed otherwise. It was
Wow.
very exciting to be a part of that. Like any accelerator is always fun to be a part of. And personally, it was gratifying for me to innovate on how we selected companies, how we rewarded prize money, how we built relationships with investors. Lots of those things were not the standard way that accelerators ran or continue to run.
Interesting. I'm curious, in your experience mentoring the founders, from what you saw, what do you think was the number one problem that you saw working with founders, or maybe number one problem that founders came to you to get advice for? And if you could share that advice with us.
Oh, sure. I mean, everyone's got their favorite answer for this, and most of them are right. You know, um, so the number one thing that kills startups, depending on who you ask, both of these answers I find to be very satisfying. It's either the team, so get your team dynamics right. That's not my superpower. I'm okay at helping people with team dynamics, but I'm not like a psychologist and professionally trained in that area.
Mm,
The other arguably number one cause of death of startups, uh, and people will come to you for this. They won't come to you for the other one. They don't realize that until generally it's too late. So you have to sort of see it and bring it up. This one is premature scaling, and I think particularly in your part of the country where it's, go big, go home, 40% week over week growth, or else you're not cool anymore, kid. There's so much pressure to grow really fast. Um, and that is important. If you're going to build a great startup and attract venture capital, then you have to grow rapidly. But I see far more startups die from growing too fast than from growing too slow. Yes, you can grow too slow, but like it's it's not the thing that's likely to kill
yeah.
you. Meteors can kill you. Sharks can kill you, but heart disease is a bigger risk. So maybe we should focus more on going to the gym and not smoking than shark repellent. So I spend much of my time working with startups, figuring out how they can prototype faster and cheaper, how they can learn from their customers faster. Everyone, as I'm sure you saw, thinks, "Oh no, I can't show this to the customer yet. I'll be embarrassed. It'll ruin my brand." I even see that with my clients. They're like, "Oh no, no, we have these huge companies as customers. We can't show them this thing that's not done." I'm like, they're not going to care. Like, no, 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 our brand is at stake. I'm like, have you seen what you give them now? I don't say it that way. I say it much nicer.
Yeah.
I'm like, have you seen the spreadsheets you give them? Like, really, we're going to be fine. Let's find the one, not any one of your clients. You probably have a client that's like an accounting firm. Probably don't pick them. Let's go find the client that's like really hip and that loves technology. Maybe you've got Netflix or Amazon as a good. They probably have people like, we are sick of your spreadsheets and we want a cool thing. We can pilot with them right now. And it's really hard for me to drag them to do that. And that's the same thing over and over again with my entrepreneurs over the years. There was almost never a time when they prototyped too early.
Interesting.
I
It's
wish
like
I could help figure out how to do it for less money.
Yeah, no, it's like you took the concept, right? What are the founders actually looking for? And oftentimes you mention the founders scale too quickly or, hire too many people or, take on too much more than they can handle. But you're saying take that desire to move quickly and put it into the product and the existing customers and piloting and feedback and also getting to lower cost development quicker, right? So like inside rather than stretching outside. Is that sort of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
principle there?
Spend more time in direct contact with customers than doing what I did with my first company, where me and my co-founder, who's still a dear friend to this day, I don't know how we managed to survive that, but we did, where we would sit in front of a whiteboard for 8 hours,
Ah,
while we had day jobs, like we'd carve 8 hours out, and our future wives were sitting there wondering and yelling at each other as if there was anything we wrote on that whiteboard that meant a damn thing. We were
mhm.
wrong. We should have spent an hour at the whiteboard and then gotten in front of freaking customers and found out that we were wrong and fixed But instead, we argued as if we knew. Again, because we were
Yeah,
afraid, we didn't want to waste time. We didn't want to waste the develop. I mean, you don't want to waste your developers' time. You don't want to spend money on prototyping if you don't have a lot of money. But it's shocking what you can do with a brochure. Prototyping is a concept I'm sure you were exposed to, but I hope that your audience is familiar with it. How can you build something that is way earlier than you think and show a picture of the
yep,
thing or a concept of the thing to the
yeah.
customer is so much better than talking. You should talk. Talking to a customer is better than talking to your co-founder. Showing something to the customer is better than talking to the customer. Letting
Mm.
the customer use something, however ugly and inaccurate, is better than showing them a picture of the. So that's the scale, and you should figure out how to do that as quickly as you can.
Very cool. That startup that you mentioned with your co-founder, was that the gaming startup? Because I want to
Yes,
learn
the video
about
games for the blind company. As bad an idea as it sounds, but
it.
still wonderful.
How did you get into it? What kind of games did you make? What was your passion for games? Like, yeah, I used to work in games too, VR gaming. It takes very passionate people to struggle and survive in that industry.
Yes. Well, I had been a hardcore gamer my whole life, and I was a physicist and had just realized after working at a particle accelerator, which I was very lucky to get to do while an undergraduate,
Wow.
that I was not going to want to be a physicist for the rest of my life, that I had been wrong from sixth grade on. But I love video games, and my foolish best friend said, well, we should just start our own video game company. How hard could it be? And then we went to the Game Developers Conference, and we realized two things. One, we were so much more out of our league than we had any idea of beforehand. And two, we didn't care. It was so cool. We
Yeah.
totally had to freaking do it. And then we came back, and a light went off in our heads when we were hanging out with a friend of ours who was a blind computer programmer. And he showed us what games he was playing. Yeah, imagine writing code if you can't see, right? The guy's crazy.
Mhm.
And he skis. He's not a normal human being. He's remarkable. But I digress. So he showed us what games he was playing, and I recognized them because I had played them when I was a kid on my Commodore 64. They're all text-based adventures. So we're like, oh, here's how we can make it in the video game industry. There's no competition in the space, and we don't have to worry about expensive visuals. So,
Mhm.
like, this is where two idiots, a landscape architect and a computational physicist, have a shot. And so we did. That's how we got in, and that was our passion. Now, of course, the problem was one thing I do teach my students is usually the market size is not a problem, but every now and then it is. Like if there's only 100,000 blind people with internet access at home, and you're going to charge them $8 a month, your total economic opportunity is not going to be attractive to investors. Do
Okay.
that math. You're going to get 1% market share. No, you got a tiny little business. I didn't figure that out until entirely too late. But that's why we got pulled in, and it was an amazing experience. It's where I learned a huge chunk of what I know about entrepreneurship. I learned the hard way by screwing up. So usually when I'm talking to my students over the years, I'm saying, don't do this. No, I didn't learn that in a textbook. I learned it by screwing it up. I have no glory to share upon you. I have no PhD except the PhD of screwing up. So if make new mistakes, don't make my mistakes.
Honestly, that's the experiences and learnings that I prefer to learn from, right? Is people who have made the mistakes because I know I'm going to make those mistakes at some point. Hearing a story about how somebody succeeded and everything went well for them, well, how much of that was luck, right? And how much of that is actually things that I really need to know. So, no, I really, really appreciate that.
Survivorship bias is a thing, and that was one nice thing I got out of physics because I use almost none. I love that I was a physicist. It was a fantastic experience. I use almost none of it, but some of the few things I use are basically statistics. And so I learned about like, oh yeah, survivorship bias. So you won the lottery. You standing up and telling people that my technique was to never give up and keep buying lottery tickets. That's basically what most entrepreneurs that are successful say. It's not lottery tickets. They're talking about their company, but like
Mhm.
I'm sure there was more to it than that. But the way you're pitching it is no different than a lottery winner, and that's not sufficient.
I agree. I agree. I think we need to hear more from, you know, the other 99% or whatever, right? So, this is the last question. Can you tell me about the pictures behind you on the wall? Is there a story behind that?
Oh, certainly. So, my mother is an artist, and her genes passed right through me, completely unexpressed, and then expressed in my two daughters. So, one side is my older daughter, and one side, generally the rainbow side, is my younger daughter. And when the pandemic hit, we all had to sequester ourselves in little home offices. At that point in time, I was in the basement, and it looked like I was in a basement. It was pretty dungeony. And then, like all fathers or parents, I had a pile of this art just sitting around in boxes. So I just started putting it up behind me so that I could have, because you have to look at yourself in these damn meetings. So now I can see my kids' art every day. And
Oh,
then, well, my kids loved that their art was on display at my
yeah.
meetings, and actually, just about everyone I've ever talked to notices and likes it. So then, when I finally got to out of the basement and into a honest to God, nice office. I just transferred the wall and expanded it so it goes up a fair ways and off to the sides.
That's amazing. Do you keep adding art pieces to the art
I,
wall?
I do, and everything
Nice.
on this iteration of the wall, not the original one. That was a painful mistake. The original wall was all tape. This one is
Oh,
thumbtacks, so I can
oh, nice.
rotate art in and out. And there are some other walls in the house. On occasions, I need to move to another spot to do a meeting, and I have more art on those areas. So yes, it just keeps on expanding. I imagine I never have to worry about wallpaper here. By the time they go to college, I'll just have all the horizontal,
Oh,
vertical surfaces covered.
that's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for speaking with us here today and sharing your wealth of wisdom with us. And the last question is, who should reach out to you, and what's the best way to reach you?
Sure. So if you are specifically if you're someone with P&L responsibility, or you know the person that has P&L responsibility, and the pain points I said resonate with you, give me a call. I'm very intimidating to talk to, as you can see from this tie. And I've spent a long time helping people work that out. So you can contact me at paul.silva@pixeledge.io. I'm sure you'll have it in the session notes and all that good
Yep.
stuff.
Absolutely. And all the links will be in the description. And hey, just audience members, we have a special promotion for podcast listeners. You could use Swift for free for up to 5 employees. Try it out. Get your devices meeting compliance and secure. And if you like Swift or know somebody who would like Swift, you can refer us for a referral bonus. Details will be in the description. Thank you so much, Paul, for speaking with us today. And it's been a pleasure. We'll see you all next time. Thank you.
Likewise. See you.